Hi guys, so I'm gonna talk about the module I created here called the AI Interpolator module. I will actually talk a little bit in general about Drupal because this mattered when I took the choice to actually do this in Drupal rather than uh, some other programming language, some other framework, some other CMS that I know how to develop for. Um, but to start off then, the AI Interpolator module is essentially a very simple module. What it's doing is that it takes some kind of field value, either some simple field value like an integer or a string or something, or even a complex value. It could be an image, for instance, or later I'm gonna add, for instance, a Google Maps field, which could have stuff like latitude, longitude in it, and location fields with addresses and stuff like that. It takes these and then uses some kind of logic. Doesn't necessarily need to be AI. That's where it started because I was trying to figure out a simple way of doing this with the GPT services from OpenAI. But I kind of quickly realized that I could make this way more flexible. So it doesn't necessarily need to be AI services. It could be strict PHP logic. It could be some other API service that doesn't necessarily do anything related to AI. But anyway, it takes this field and manipulates it and takes the manipulated result and put in another field that doesn't necessarily have to be the same field type. So a very simple use case would be that you have a very long text and you want to summarize that, right? So you could easily go to ChatGPT and like say, hey, this is my text, please summarize it in 2 sentences, copy and paste this, and you know, do it that way. This of course sucks if you need to do this 1,000 times. Um, but that's text to text. So another simple use case that's very powerful is that you might have a legacy website with a lot of articles in it already, and you just thought of some new category that you want to add in what Drupal calls then a taxonomy, a vocabulary with taxonomy terms. This, of course, if you have 1,000 articles or something, no one wants to sit and manually read those and figure out which category does this belong to and so on. And this is something that the AI interpolator could do very easily as well then. And this is a use case where you take one type of field, a text field, manipulate it into another type of field, which is a taxonomy field then in Drupal. And coming back to Drupal, the reason why I chose Drupal, outside of knowing Drupal fairly well, uh, is that I kind of realized that all the chaining tools that exist, or all the things that I have tried out so far with chaining different AIs together, um, they are either very stable and you have to use code, right? Which means that managers I work with or managers I work with will not be able to do it easily. So if we need to prototype something quickly, this will take time because you still have to write some code for it, right? Uh, the other the other reasoning as well is of course that if you have a content management framework like Drupal, or even maybe a content management system like WordPress, you get a lot of structure in there already. There are already a lot of field structures, and I think Drupal is way more powerful with this than WordPress. WordPress is very good for specifically for articles, blog posts, and so on. But when you want something that's all compassing, then I guess Drupal or maybe Joomla. I don't know Joomla so well, but that could probably be used as well. So that's like the reasoning behind Drupal. And this initial video, I will actually show you a little bit the background behind Drupal, how you use Drupal as well. Um, and setting up a Drupal environment from scratch, and how you can set up a simple AI chain very easily without actually needing to code almost anything. I am not gonna cut in this video, so there might be bugs that you see and so on, and it might not be the most interesting video because I haven't really prepared so much, but it's a good view maybe how fast you actually can set up something, in this case in Drupal, without even having to code anything. What you do need, preferably, I mean, you could have some hosted environment, but now I'm gonna use a tool that's called Doxal. I can show this here just so you see it. So there is this Doxal tool where there's clear installation instructions. So I'm gonna run this locally. And you can just choose which operating system you're using and adapt to that basically. But this I already have installed then. So this gives me the fin command where I can do fin project create. Call my project AI just. I'm gonna choose Drupal 10 with Composer. So you should at least have the basics of PHP. I'm not gonna explain what Composer is in this case. So, but you can Google it. It's like a package manager. So if you come from the JavaScript world, it's similar to npm, right? Or Maven from the Java world and so on. And this will just set up my environment for me. It will download all the Drupal dependencies that I need. It will set up the servers that I will need. It will set up databases. So basically, I can start working from scratch. So Drupal, as I said, comes with complex field types, and that's what I'm gonna show now. It also comes with a configuration management system, and this is very important for anyone that comes from WordPress, where you always have this problem that you might have to do something locally, and then you might have to do it in your dev environment, and then in your stage, and then in your production, or maybe you work at production directly, which works for certain types of projects, but maybe not how you should be doing it. In this case, everything is stored in configuration, including the module that I'm gonna talk about today. So while we're talking about that, I can talk about the sub-modules, because the AI Interpolator in itself is actually just an API that talks to Drupal, and it doesn't do anything by itself. It exposes a way for plugins to say basically, hey, I am a rule for this field type that can generate for this field type. And as soon as you have installed a plugin then, which is a module in Drupal, you have that available. So if you just install the AI Interpolator, it's not gonna do anything for you. So now we have our site here, by the way. And this is gonna be the standard site of Drupal then. So I'm just gonna copy this, and then we open it here, and you get a standard Drupal site. And now we just copy the password here, so we can log in. And then we have admin and password, and all of a sudden we're logged in then to our system. The first thing I'm gonna do is add a module called the admin toolbar, because that's really basically very important for me. So I'm using Composer to get the code. I guess it's admin toolbar, I hope. Oh, right, I have the CD in there. So I'm gonna be using terminal now, but as you're gonna see, I'm actually not gonna touch any code. And what I'm doing with downloading the files, there are manual ways to do this. So if you don't feel comfortable with the terminal, you can go to Drupal's website and download these modules manually instead. And there are easier ways. I mean, easier ways if you don't want to touch the terminal to set up Drupal as well. So now it has downloaded it. I'm gonna do it the GUI way now. I could use Drush to install this, of course, but I will just show you here. So here you have all the modules that you currently have, right? So in this case, I'm gonna do just the admin toolbar, and then you will see here, because right now it doesn't drop down. So if I install this, this admin menu becomes a lot more usable. And the first thing I'm going to show you is basically how to create a content type then in Drupal. It comes with 2 content types. I will remove those for now, so we can start from scratch. That's because I did the standard installation. You can do a minimal profile as well, and then you basically have to build everything from scratch. It's just the standard comes with some things you can showcase, right? So I'm gonna set up a content type, and it's important to say that the AI Interpolator that works with any entity type for anyone that works with Drupal, because if you're working a little bit more professionally or maybe scalable, you want your custom entity types rather than working with nodes just. But in this case, then I'm gonna add a new content type that I call a article that has a title. There are some other settings you can learn about that by watching some Drupal tutorials. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna speed through this a little bit, so it's not a hour-long video that might be very uninteresting for people that already knows Drupal, right? So I just try to show the basics, and if someone is interested in to use this, there's a lot of places where you can read a lot more about Drupal. This comes with a body field that I will remove because I don't like the text formatted along with summary. So here comes the interesting thing then. This is the fields that we have available. I'm gonna create a new field. And this is what I talked about then, that Drupal comes with a lot of fields that are easy, simple or complex. So in this case, maybe I'm gonna do a text formatted long, and formatted in this case means that you can actually use a HTML editor. So similar to how Word works, where you can bold text or do italic text and so on. And we just call this the text then, right? And we say we just want one, we don't want many. We can say we want full HTML, and we just save this, right? And then we can say if it should show up in the form, which we want, of course. I'm just gonna remove some stuff that Drupal adds by default in the form. That's not important for this showcase. So we have the title and the text, and when we show it, we have the text. You can set if it should have a label. I don't want a label in this case, and we just save it. And then I go to content, add content to add an article. So I will just go to cnn.com now to take an article here. So Rupert Murdoch steps down as Fox and News Corp's chairman, right? And I hope CNN is okay with me just copying this for this example. So I'm gonna show you some way to actually get this in a cooler fashion later, but for now I will just copy it as it is, right? So we copied this, and this should have a header, I guess. This didn't actually copy so well. Let's see here. Let's do this. This should be a paragraph. Let's see here. So, and this should be a heading. So, well, we don't, well, I just take a little bit more, and that's okay. And then I save it. And then you see the article here, right? I didn't copy any images or something like that for now. But this is the article I have then. And a typical use case in Drupal is that you might want to list this in something called a views. I'm not gonna set up a views now, but in that views you might want to have a summary. So I know there was this text long with summary, but in this case, I want to create another field that I can interpolate to show the interpolation module and what it can do then, right? So the way you would do it before is then that I would go to my content type, to the manage fields. I would create another text format long that I would call the summary then. And I would add a full HTML, and maybe we should fill that out before the text, and we can show it on the page. Yeah, we can have the labels now, so we know what's the summary and what's the text. And then if I go to content and edit my content, this would now then have to be filled out manually, which would suck if I have thousands of articles and I have to read them through and like summarize them. You would probably need some Mechanical Turk service or hire a lot of editors or something like that for that. But this is of course where AI comes in, and this is the use case. Then I could of course just copy this text, ask ChatGPT to summarize it for me and paste it in. But this is what the AI interpolator takes care of. So what I'm gonna do now for this use case is first of all I'm gonna get the AI interpolator. Right, this is something important now then. It is still in alpha mode, right? So please do not use this in production. It's not meant to be used in production yet, okay? Alpha 1, I guess it is. There we go. The exact version you can see here, right? And if I now enable this, let's search for it, AI Interpolator module, you're gonna see this doesn't really do anything. There's nothing to do. So if I go down to the interpolator, there's actually no permissions. There's nothing. It doesn't create some submenu that you have to set up or anything, because it doesn't really do anything. So for me to be able to actually do something now, I have to install one of the submodules. And what is available then is the OpenAI module. So this is a little bit bad naming because it doesn't include DALL-E. It just includes the GPT part. But what this can do is it can take text and interpolate that into other text or categories. It can subtract certain structured things like links and images and so on, but there's actually another module that I would say does this better. And this is what we're gonna use for this first use case then. Then you have Dream Studio, which is API for stable diffusion, and this makes it so we can create a text field and then generate an image from this automatically. CNex is the opposite. You take an image and ask it what is happening in this image, and you can fill out a text field with what's happening basically. Then we have Scraping Bot. So this is for scraping websites using an actual browser, and you can even use proxies in this case. So if you have to fetch it from United States because of GDPR or something, this works with this, and it also works then with sites that are not using server-side rendering. So you can basically get anything in that case. Extractor can extract things from text. So basically give a huge mass of text with maybe some links in it, then it can extract those links into link field, so it gets structured. Simple Crawler is the same thing as Scraping Bot, but it's just using curl, which means it doesn't work on things that's not server-side rendered. But it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot faster because it runs from the server right away, right? 11 Labs field is another field I actually created. So that's a structured field where you can auto-generate audio from text. But this can, of course, then auto-generate the whole dialogue. So you could even do something. I have this article that we added here, and I want you to create two people discussing the article and just the content in the article, and it can actually do this. Then we have the post-OB processor. I'm not going to go into that. That's for developers more because you can set it up to work together with the API. So if you want to use JSON API, GraphQL, or something like that, that's built in, that you can get with Drupal, this will work as well. Anyway, what we need now then is the OpenAI module as well to get something working. This has a requirement that you need to use the general OpenAI module. So I haven't prepared, I guess, the composer JSON, so that will be in the next release. So it needs this module, right? And this, just for everyone to know, it only works with, oh, sorry, that's not the version I wanted to download. It only works with Drupal 10 because it has a PHP 8.2, I guess, requirement. So this is rather the version that we need. So we allow discovery to execute code, and that's it. So now I should be able to then enable the OpenAI GPT, and this will ask me that I want to enable the OpenAI module as well. The next step that you need to do now then, that I will do outside of this window, but I will show you where it is at least. So under configuration, OpenAI settings, you have to add your API key, right? So I'm just gonna do that here outside of what you're seeing here. So I just need to log in. Let's see here. I need to have my authenticator app here. And get an API key. So create new secure key. Well, I guess I could have created a key I removed after, but anyway, you basically log into OpenAI and get your key, and that's it. And then I'm gonna save it here. So now it's saved then, and we can go back to our article. And now when I have done this, what's gonna happen then is if I go to the content type article now, manage fields, and I go to the summary, could go to the text and do it the opposite way, but it doesn't matter. You see there's a new checkbox here called Enable AI Interpolator. So what happened now is the AI Interpolator module has asked around basically, is there a plugin that wants to do something for a text area or text long formatted? And the OpenAI module will raise its hand and say, hey, I have something here. And then you see that rule available. So that's the OpenAI text long rule, right? And here you have basically two, basically a way to do it, and that's that you choose, in this case then, the text. I mean, this is the base field that you want to use. So this is the field you want to interpolate from into the new value. And in this case, it's the text then. And then you can check placeholders available. Soon there's also, just for your information, it's gonna be available to use tokens as well. So you can make a more complex workflow where you use multiple fields. So token is something that the Drupal developers will probably know from things like PathAuto. And here I can say then context or the raw context that would include HTML if I want HTML, right? But in this case, I just want the text. So what I can do then, based on the text, create a summary of 100 to 300 characters. Context is the context. And this will then be replaced with the text about Murdoch in this case. Then there is advanced settings. So here you see the token field that's gonna be fixed any minute now, will be in alpha 2. And this has something called edit when changed, and that means when the base field has changed, then we need to create a new summary. Because if you change the article completely, of course the summary is not correct anymore. And if you want that, you have to click edit when change. I'm not gonna do it in this case. Then every plugin has these two fields as well, and that's interpolator weight. And that basically means when it's supposed to run this rule. Because the cool thing that you have outside of doing stuff like this is that you can chain, meaning that I'm gonna show an example after here where I actually create a preview image for the article as well, and in that case I have to create a image description to send to Stable Diffusion, and this has to happen, of course, before I ask Stable Diffusion to create the image. But in this case, I just keep a default value. Then you can say how you want it to work. And this also comes from plugins. There are 3 plugins by default, and direct, that means basically when you click save on the entity, it starts processing. And this is okay if you know that the interpolator rules that you're gonna run doesn't take time. So if it's, for instance, extracting images from a HTML document, that goes in milliseconds. It's not gonna be an issue. You can do hundreds of these rules and it's not gonna be an issue, right? But the problem in general for web hosting, and when you have a web server, you usually have timeout on it, and you have it on the PHP. Usually you have it on the PHP execution time as well, because you don't want, you know, to be attacked by hundreds of people or one person DDoSing some endpoint that might run forever and you run out of workers. So because of this, most environments sets up a time limit, and because of this is not always a good choice then. But if you know your rules are gonna be short, or if you know that the person sitting there has the time to wait and you have set high time limits, then that's okay, of course. The other option is queuecron. So basically what this does, it will save it as a queue worker process, and then you have to run this via Drush. So you could run this every minute, for instance, and that means you save it, and this will flag like, hey, someone wants a summary next time you run the cron or the queue workers. And then the next time when the queue worker runs, it will fill this. And this usually doesn't have timeouts, right? But that of course means that if you have a cron or a queue worker only running every 30 minutes, you have to wait 30 minutes. So that's okay in certain situations. Maybe you import 10,000 articles from a CSV, then you can't anyway expect it to just be finished in seconds, but rather maybe do it via cron. The third option then is batch, and that's using the batch API in Drupal, which basically adds a JavaScript layer that runs each rule by itself. So each rule has one timeout. This is nice if you know that you're just gonna use the GUI to actually interpolate. Then it's very good. But the problem with this is if you have this rule and you programmatically save a entity or a content type or whatever you're doing, or via API, then that would be the same as programmatically saving it, not saving it from the form. This will not work. And that's where the module I showed before comes in. So, but that's for advanced usage, right? Then there might be specifics, because this is open AI, you can choose the model. This also, of course, includes fine-tune models. So you can fine-tune model if you want. You can also say a role if you want, similar to what you can do in ChatGPT, right? This you should always keep on. So that's basically running through moderation with OpenAI beforehand, because if you send certain things, for instance, hate speech or porn, I guess, you have to read the terms of services from OpenAI. But basically, if you do this, I don't know, one time or many time, I don't know what the exact rule is, you can you can be shut out of the services. And this sucks, of course, if you had some editor writing an article about hate speech and they didn't know about this, and you get suspended from the services because of this, right? So this runs from moderation first, and if the moderation basically says this will not be allowed, it's never gonna send that request, and there will be a warning message then in Drupal that this couldn't be interpolated. The only reason I can see to ever turn this off is because it takes some half a second to get a response, and if you really are in full control of what's getting inputted there, you can of course turn it off then. So now I'm just saving this, and how this works now then when I go to the content is that it knows that since this has not been filled out, it needs to be filled out even if I didn't change anything here, right? So when I click save now, because here you see this JavaScript layer then, it runs this query to OpenAI and you get a summary. And that's basically the very simple idea of the AI Interpolator. So what I will do now, just so you see a chaining as well, and also maybe some of the other modules that we have here, is that I will add AI Interpolator Dream Studio. So I will do the thing I said that I would do before, which is creating an image, right? So I will now then do the same thing as before. Under web service, there's the Stream Studio config, and I'm gonna do that outside here so you don't see it. I have to log into Dream Studio. I should have prepared this maybe beforehand, but bear with me. Yeah, so I actually made a cut there. It took a couple of minutes for me to log into Dream Studio, so I will cut this video together. And anyway, we're back on the content. What we can do now then, when I finally added the Dream Studio API key, is that we can go to manage fields again. Once again, we're gonna add the text formatted long. I guess it doesn't need to be formatted, but doesn't matter. Image prompt. So here we're gonna create the prompt now then. Gonna be one prompt. We don't need multiple. Full HTML. Enable AI Interpolator. Same thing again. We're gonna take from the text. So based on the context text, create an image. Create a descriptive and vivid image description of an event connected. Oh, we write like this: create a description connected to the context. Describe what is happening and the scene in detail. I mean, this is you know why they're talking about prompt engineers, right? You have to find whatever prompt fits your how you generate these kind of things. And that's the funny thing with the module. I think there will be use cases that I have not ever thought of where you can use this, right? Keep it under 200 characters. So and we have to add the context, of course, as well then. So that's the context. And we keep this, we set batch, we save it. And now then, because I added Dream Studio, when I create an image, I'm gonna have interpolator fields. I think I actually get it from OpenAI as well, but it's gonna be multiple now then. So if I do article image now, save this, we just want one image. Same thing here, we enable AI interpolator field. Now there's two rules. So there is one where you can fetch images via OpenAI, but in this case we're gonna generate the image, right? And this is going to be generated from the image prompt. And then we add context and write stuff like realistic, Canon EOS, shallow field of depth. So there's, I mean, this you can look up. There's like this prompt directories where you can find how to write a good stable diffusion prompt. This is just some minor examples there. This can be done better. This is just to showcase to get something right. So now the important thing, interpolator weight has to be higher than the weight of the image prompt, because the image prompt has to exist to be able to create the image, right? And then you can choose the version of stable diffusion you want to use. I use 2.0 in this case. And then hopefully if I go back and edit, you see that the prompt and the image is empty, but if I save, it's gonna run 2 steps now then. First step to create the prompt, second to the Dream Studio. That will be a little bit slower because it actually generates an image. And then if we look at the article, I think, well, we have a creepier Robert Murdoch there, right? And here you have the image prompt. And that's it basically. That's how the interpolator works. Create stuff via AI or interpolate from other content. It's in beta, don't use in production. Please report bugs. Thank you.